Hey everybody, this is Professor Lilly, and I'm just chiming here to tell you what to cover to prepare for the midterm exam. All right, so as I said in the email, I couldn't. There's only a couple people who could have covered me for that meeting that they scheduled some Tuesdays during our class time, and no one could fill in. So instead of having a review session, I'm doing this video to tell you what to review, and then giving you that time as an online day to actually do the review. So at this point, everyone's turned in module 2, and it's going to take me a while to do all that grading, but um, by the time you're back from spring break, then you'll have your module 2 grades in there, and you should have your exam grade, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. Let me get down to the exam. And before we get to that, remember that you can go ahead and start module 3. So the idea for module 3 is you can do it this week, because we're not going to meet in class this week. If you have that time, go ahead and get it done with, or you can do it over break and submit it. So this is the Tuesday right here before we get back, or when we get back from spring break. So that would be our first class after, or when we get back from break. So this needs to be done, submitted before then. And like I said in the last class, this is definitely the easiest module. And some people, this might not take you much more than an hour to go through this module. Watch the sound trap tutorial. If you want to, there's a practice activity, but basically that's just another professor and I worked on that to do something in class, but we don't really need to spend a whole class for this. And then in terms of this should be one MP3 file where you record an intro, you pause it, you record interview to one person, and you pause it, and then record the other interview, and you can add background and music into it as well. Basically want to make it as polished as you can, but it really only needs to be a minute to, you can go a little bit longer than 90 seconds, could be 2 minutes. And here are some ideas. So as long as you come up with a concept, so you're basically kind of like, whoever you're interviewing, you're asking them the same question, or you're talking about the same thing. It doesn't need to be just one of these 4, but you can see here where it's pretty wide open. If you're have an idea and you are unsure about it, you can just email me and I'll respond. So the Soundtrap tutorials here are the only required ones, but there's more Soundtrap information here. And you can download or get Soundtrap on either the iTunes store for your phone or the Android store, or the Google store. And again, the idea is that to do this on your phone, if you really wanted to, you could be on a computer using a free software called Audacity. Or even like I have GarageBand on this. You could even do that, and you could record the interview and audio on your computer. But then you would have to go and look up like on Google how to do GarageBand, or the same thing for how to do Audacity. And there's tons of documentation both on YouTube and just on the web in general, and on the manufacturer's websites on how to use these applications. And then also remember that you need to submit, as it says here, your tutorial journal for module 3. So if you decide to do something other than the Soundtrap, then you have to just tell me, oh, I wanted to use GarageBand, and I went here and here and got this information on how to use it. So this should all be your tutorial journal as a Word doc, and then your audio that you've produced as an MP3 file. Put those in a folder and zip it up, and then submit it right here. Okay. before either this week or next week before the Tuesday we get back. All right. So don't forget that. All right. So on to the exam. Here's the link. So at the beginning of class time on Thursday, so Thursday, February 28th at 12:15, if you click on that link, then bam, you will be taken into the exam, and it closes at the normal end of class time. So you have 75 minutes to work on the exam. The format will be you'll have several questions per page, but once you advance past that page, though, then you can't go back to it. Okay, and this is just a precaution to make sure that people aren't not sure about a question, and then they are going and looking online and find the answers, because you could do that if you could go back. So once there's got, I think, maybe 4 or 5 questions per page. You can spend some time on those, but once you decide, okay, I'm done with this, I want to move on, you can't come back to it. Okay. I will make this. If you want to write down some notes on a piece of paper or a Word document, that's fine, but that's the only notes you can use. So you cannot go to the online resources, to the tutorials, anything like that. But if you're reviewing or you've taken down notes in class, you can jot down in a piece of paper or type down in Word some notes. That's fine to use, because there is a fair amount of information. This class has a lot of breadth, but not a lot of depth. So because there's a lot of breadth that's covered in Module 1 and 2, it's okay if you take down some notes, handwritten or hand-typed, and that's it. You cannot go to external web resources on the webs, just a Word document where you're typing information or handwriting information. You also need to take this exam by yourself. So if someone else is there helping you, or you're asking another person, that would be considered cheating, as would going to the web to find the answers. One thing with that in mind is some of the lecture information and resources in the tutorials, there might be slightly different information other areas on the web. So it's also a little bit dangerous to go there, because you might find some different type information. One thing while we're talking about just general issues, so there will be, I think, about 25 multiple choice questions. There will be a couple matching questions, maybe 1 or 2 fill in the blank questions, and then a couple short essays. And the short essays would be like, give you a question prompt, and it'd be like, answer this in like 4 to 5 sentences. So not huge essays, and you're really just trying to get out the information that you can on that, whatever the particular topic is asking you to. So it's not going to be like 600-word essays. We're talking like just several sentences, and each question will ask you or tell you how much to answer. So just get as much information as you can think about for those essay questions. After the time is up for the exam, so I guess at 1:30, if you go back into it, it should tell you how you did on your multiple choice questions, but I have to go back in and manually grade the essays. So it's not going to give you your total grade. And just in terms of the total grade, if no one scores a good A, and or if the majority of scores are pretty low, then I will do a curve. Also, if I look at a question, one thing that's good about Moodle is it's easy for me to identify how all the students did on one particular question. So if I look at a question and hardly anyone got it right, then that means that either the question is not a very good question, or maybe whatever information is covered in that question we really didn't cover in class, or wasn't in one of the readings. So anyway, so I'll look at that, and then I'll also look at the total scores. And I'll announce when we get back if there's going to be a curve or something like that. And I tend to not grade super hard on the essays, but still, you want to do your best on the essays, because some of the questions I don't think are too difficult in the essays, so you want to do your best. All right, so what to cover when you're studying. So this is all modules 1 and 2 for the exam. And so in module 1, and I mentioned this in class, so these three, this is more of an infographic here, memory and storage, and well, we'll start with that one. So I would definitely read through this a few times, and maybe take some notes, like just a teeny note or two on each one of these. You know, basically, and they basically are important for kind of understanding how computers work, and then later how the web works, and where the progression comes from that. So I would spend, I don't know, some time making sure you reread this and writing down a couple of the names. There aren't any like super tricky questions, but being able to identify some of these, or what their significance is, will be on the exam. History of the web is important. We're going to get more into this in module, or in the second half of the semester. But in terms of specifics of the history, that is covered. So what some of these dates are, what some of the first web browsers are, would be good to know. The main important companies at the very beginning of the web, some of the design trends. So those are the type things to know. When some of the big companies came in and started to change things around, like YouTube, those things are important to know. Definitely there will be information, because we did, you know, this module did focus mostly on the cloud apps, on what the difference between the different cloud apps are. Yeah, so be able to identify what some of the different strengths and weaknesses of the different cloud apps are. We're not going to touch on WordPress.org specifically, at least not in this first exam. You want to know why to resize photos in Photoshop, and what the purpose is in terms such as DPI and PPI from Module 2. And let's see, so the main readings or things to study would be down here. So there's not going to be so much what button to press in Photoshop to do this or something like that. So there's not that. You do want to know what the difference is between the main uses for Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. You definitely want to know the 8 design principles. You want to know the do this reading on the main file formats for photos. You know, you might want to kind of open up Illustrator in Photoshop and go to open up a file and go to Save As and see what are the different photos, what are the different formats that it could open or work with, and to know a teeny bit about those. We haven't really talked about typography just because we haven't had too much time, but you know, this is, like it says, typography in 10 minutes. Definitely make sure you know that, so you know some of the basic lingo of typography. That's just in general good to know. Also know, you know, here's another way to learn about web graphic formats, and so to watch this video I think is also really useful. All right, and then make sure you click on this one where it's some more resources. Okay, so the guide to image resolution, that's good because you should know what image resolution is, what are the different ways to describe it, like PPI and DPI, and what it is. I don't think I asked the question, what is a favicon, but it's good to know that. You should know the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator, and which one is based on vector, and what the difference is between a vector and a bitmap, because that's important. You don't have to re-look at these really nitty-gritty tutorials, but so for this one, I'd say this one is good, and or important. And then I don't think you have to know the differences between the different banner sizes, but yeah, so I don't think you need to focus too much on that. And like I said, the tutorials that focus on the nitty gritty of actually using the different applications, you don't have to go back and look at those. Okay, and that's basically it. Now that is a lot. So even though I said that's basically it for you to cover. So that'll give you, and not only that, but we just spent some time thinking about what's important and what's not so important. So remembering, like I said, which button to push in different applications is you'll forget that, but it's good to know the things I just talked about and things that will hopefully stick with you. Okay, so like I said, going back, make sure. So also, just for the exam, make sure, like I said, you feel good about once you go through the questions on a particular page, feel good about it, and then click on, and you won't be able to come back to it. I know there's a couple people that mentioned. There's a couple of athletes said, so if you happen to be traveling right at this time, like I said, you don't want to be taking this phone or this exam on your phone on a kind of a not a very good connection, because just it's first of all hard to look at it on your phone, and then also you want to have a good connection. If something happens and you get kicked off during this time, it should let you back in because it will recognize that you're coming back into it. I've never had a problem. I've been doing these online exams for a couple years, and I've never had a student. Now, there have been cases when students weren't quite sure if what they got was actually entered in the database, and so I'm able to go through after the fact and say, oh yeah, I can see your answers there. So if there's some kind of question issue like that, then I can go back through, and but that's why you really need to be somewhere like library or your dorm room or a classroom with a stable internet connection to get onto Moodle to take the. It's called a quiz, but it's really an exam. It's just the name of the tool is quiz. Okay, if there are any other questions, just let me know. I'll try to send out a reminder Thursday or Wednesday night, just to remind you. Like I said, you don't even have to be on campus. You can use the class time or class space if you want. Just make sure you're ready right before it. And like if you're clicking on it right then and your computer says it's 12:15, well, the Moodle system might think it's 12:14. So don't freak out if it's if you're clicking and it's not letting you in. It just might be like a minute difference, but no matter what, it will give you 75 minutes on the exam. Remember, only your own notes. You're not allowed to use anything else. And to be honest, I think 75 minutes is plenty of time. But if you did go and you looked at, you didn't know an answer and you were looking online for the answer, it would just take you a while to try to find the answer, and you would have wasted a fair amount of time. So there is enough material in there, so you can't just be sitting there and trying to find the answer that you don't really know. So with your notes, I would make sure they're well organized, and all I can say is good luck, and also do not forget that you're also supposed to be doing Module 3 on audio either this week or during your break. All right, so email me if you have any questions. Again, there's nothing specifically in the classroom this week. On Tuesday, you should be studying and or working on Module 3. And then Thursday, you basically should be doing the exam. All right, so email me with questions, and have a great spring break.